October 6, 2019. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. This is Joe with Simple Life Show. SimpleLifeRemedy.org is the website. I want to do a quick video here today of what you kind of missed while Greta Thunberg was doing her little speech there for everybody.
How dare you?
And one of the things I thought that was really interesting, and I think that we kind of need to go back to, and we need to kind of understand the magician that is at play. And the magicians are basically the central bankers, the Federal Reserve, and the people who actually pull all of the strings. We know that Greta Thunberg is kind of a puppet, and she was a nice distraction, along with all of the others, all other speakers from all over the world that were talking about how carbon was CO2 was a pollutant and everything, and that we need to get rid of it. We need to be carbon neutral by 2050, which is probably impossible without with trillions, or if not quadrillions of dollars in influx and just bankrupting every country. But we're not really thinking about that too much. So one of the biggest things that was going down back at the end of August, and when all of this stuff was actually starting to happen, you really have to pay attention to see what's going on here. While everyone was enamored with Greta Thunberg, there was a meeting that was going on, and that was called it was a Kansas City Federal Reserve meeting, and that was held in, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And that was August 22nd through the 24th. And so this happens once a year. All of these central banksters get together, and they kind of make all of the plans on where the entire world is going and what the Federal Reserve is going to do. So there are a lot of different things. There was a few main points here that I really wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of. The first is that they want to replace the dollar with a virtual currency. They want to get rid of the U.S. influence, and they want to create a one world government and a one world financial system as well. And if you think I'm joking, then I'm going to read a few things here that will shock you, and it might not shock you. I don't know. So LaRouche actually put in an article discussing some of these things that they were talking about at this annual meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney proposed at Jackson Hole, and he's at the center of all of this because he has a coalition of so many different types of banksters and banks who are on board with what he wants to do. So he's talking about the adoption of a synthetic hegemonic currency, or SHC, which is a nice way of saying virtual currency. And he wants that to replace the dollar, and he wants to be issued with no constraints by central bankers. He wants the central bankers out of it. This would allow them to go far beyond the quantitative easing, zero interest rates, and negative rates to provide unlimited liquidity to bail out the worthless derivative and other speculative instruments. Now, it sounds really good on its head, but we'll see that this is going to undermine the U.S. interest and how we trade and what's really going to happen to our own currency and our way of life. But that doesn't matter. It only matters in the scheme of the larger things that our own interest are in this country, at least, are moot. It doesn't really matter. So he goes on further by saying here that to provide unlimited liquidity to bail out the worthless derivative and other speculative instruments held on the books of the largest bank and financial institutions, as well as by centralized banks, to keep them at face value so they could continue to be traded. He specified that a virtual currency is needed with no connection to anything that is physical. So, that is, and I'm actually going to cut here to the actual notes here, and not so much the notes, but the transcript of what he was talking about. Now, this thing was about 23 pages long, but I kind of got to the heart and the meat of what he was talking about here, and I'll read some of what he was saying. History shows that the rise of a reserve currency is founded on its usefulness as a medium of exchange by reducing the cost and increasing the convenience of international payments. The additional functions of money as unit of account and store of wealth come later and reinforce the payment's motive. Now, this is really important. This is one of the most important sentences in this entire 23 pages. Technology has the potential to disrupt the network externalities that prevent the incumbent global reserve currency from being displaced. Now, what he's talking about, the incumbent global reserve currency, that is the U.S. dollar. So their whole goal is to displace the US dollar as a global reserve currency. Now, this would create havoc on all currencies, all economies, but of course, that is what they're talking about. The whole language behind what they're saying is not so much policy as is a systematic change of everything, a complete change of the deck, reshuffling of the deck. We're not even going to be using cards anymore. We're changing the game entirely. That is, if you know what the Extinction, I believe it's called Revolution Extinction or something like that. They're a group that kind of goes along. I don't even know how old they are, but they're a climate change radical group that goes. They were actually that group I posted on the website that was spraying blood all over. I believe one of the banks in England. I believe could have been somewhere else, but it was one of those places. They were spraying blood and they actually got paint and dye all over them. But they are one of those groups that is, a radical group, and they want to kind of take over. They want to change the system. They want to not so much change the policies when it comes to carbon emissions. They want to change the entire game. And this is the main point that I'm trying to get across. And this is why this meeting was done in secret. No media ever covered it. If you look, you won't find too much on this meeting. And if you do find it, they won't be talking about all the stuff that I'm talking about, right? And you have to go and look for it. You have to read the transcripts to know what they're talking about. Now, I'm surprised there even was transcripts about this, because some of the stuff they're talking about is insane. Going further here, retail transactions are taking place increasingly online rather than on the high street and through electronic payments over cash. And the relatively high cost of domestic and cross-border electronic payments are encouraging innovation. With new entrants applying new technologies, basically new entrants, which means the new types of currencies that are coming out, with the Bitcoins and the Libra. Of course, Facebook wants to take over everything. We've seen that over and over again. All of these social media giants, Facebook is one of them, Google is the other. Facebook is trying to take over everything. They are trying to get in your pocket. They want to know what you're doing with your money. And the best way that they can do that is by issuing their own currency, their own Facebook currency. I mean, this is getting really serious. The most high, this is actually what they're saying here. The most high profile of these is a Libra, a new payments infrastructure based on an international stable coin, fully backed by reserve assets and a basket of currencies, including the US dollar, the euro, and the sterling. Now, they're not talking about just making it another currency. They're talking about that being the poster child of all other currencies, and it being a reserve, and all the other currencies being a reserve asset for that one currency, the Libra, which would be a world currency. Now, if you look on Google and you actually search for Libra currency, what comes up? A new global currency. Okay, so I would suggest that you actually look into this. Facebook is trying to, Facebook is not just spying on you. They want to take over the entire world. Okay, Zuckerberg knows what he's doing. He wants to get his tentacles into everything, okay? And the more time that you spend on Facebook, I understand that there's a lot of good information out there, and I'm glad that people who are actually watching my videos and are looking at some of this kind of stuff, because it is important. You really need to know what's going on in the shadows that they're not talking to you about. So another one of the thing here is, let me see. Okay, so he's basically talking that people kind of need to start using this before they can actually institute this kind of stuff. They are trying to fast track all this stuff as well. As a consequence, it is an open question whether such a new synthetic hegemonic currency, or the virtual currency Libra, would be best provided by the public sector, perhaps through a network of central bank digital currencies. So they want to, not only do they want to make the Libra as the overall one currency for all, they want the central bank involved in it as well, even though that they said they didn't want the central banking. He's saying, yeah, we don't want any part of it, but we want it all. We want all of it. We want the digital currency. We want to know exactly what you're doing, where you're going. We can turn you on and off whenever we want to. There will be no social upheaval. We will control everything. And Facebook will, and all these other social media companies, and of course the central banks will be at the head of the entire table running everything. It will be a dystopian corporatism, fascism nightmare. And this is something that we are heading to very, very quickly. And so why everyone is arguing over Greta Thunberg and all this other kind of stuff, it just makes my blood boil, because all this stuff is happening in the background and no one's talking about it. We're all arguing about whether CO2 is a pollutant or not, but when we're actually being played for pawns. And we won't know what's really going on until the very end, when we can't do anything about it. Now, PayPal, everyone knows PayPal. I don't know if you use PayPal anymore. PayPal is kind of concerned about what's going on as well. PayPal drops out of Facebook's Libra digital currency project report. This was just yesterday. They are moving quickly with this stuff, and PayPal is kind of putting the brakes on, saying, "Well, we don't know about this kind of yet, because this whole money laundering thing, we've been kind of hit over and over with money laundering, and it's causing a lot of problems, and we don't want to risk that." But I'm telling you this right here, right now, that Facebook will be assimilated. Just like every other company will be assimilated, because it is a Borg type takeover. Okay, this is not a hyperbole anymore. This is really happening. BlackRock. If you don't know anything about BlackRock is an investment company. Okay, and BlackRock, they own no one's heard of BlackRock for some reason. They own about 7% of everything. If you look at BlackRock Incorporated, look how much they're trading for. $427 looks like Apple stock, right? So no one's ever heard of BlackRock, but they have a whole bunch of economists, central bankers on their books, and they basically invest in pretty much everything. They own a lot of stuff. If you look and you actually see how much BlackRock actually owns, then you'll be surprised. Now, they are calling for a lot of different things. Okay. They put forward a proposal here not too long ago, and this is a general outline of their proposal. The central bank would activate the SEFF, which would be the Standing Emergency Fiscal Facility, when the interest rate channel is tapped out and a significant inflation miss is expected over the policy horizon. The central bank would determine the size of the SEFF based on its estimates of what is needed to get the medium-term trend price level back to target, and would determine ex ante and ex point. Monetary policy would operate similar to yield curve control, holding yields at zero while fiscal spending ramps up. The central bank would calibrate the size of SEFF based on what is needed to achieve its target. Independent experts would decide how to best deploy the funds to both maximize impact and meet strategic investment objectives set by the government. Now, a lot of this sounds like complete hieroglyphic Egyptian. It doesn't really make sense. What they're basically saying is that the central banks are trying to they're trying to put together not only the monetary policy but also fiscal policy with the government and how the government is run. What they're basically saying and what they're proposing is that we can't trust the U.S. anymore with how they manage their money, so the central bank needs to take over everything. Okay, and this is just it's really scary what's actually going on right now. The central banks, they're trying to really take over everything. I guess they're tired of just running the Federal Reserve, and they want to actually start making fiscal policy right now instead of monetary policy. So they want to know how to spend the money. They want to tell the government how to spend the money now. This is where everything's going, okay? And they want to put the Libra, they want to put a one world currency at the helm of everything, backed by the CI asset Mark Zuckerberg, okay? Because he spies on everybody. He knows where you are. He knows whether you're sleeping, whether you're awake. He is the Santa Claus of the underworld shadow kingdom. And this is what's happening right now. So you really need to pay attention to what's going on. Okay, of course, this whole Green New Deal, and if you don't think there's a Green New Deal, there's been a Green New Deal going on for many, many years, and it all has to do with changing fiscal policy so that the central banks will not lend any money to anybody, and this is what's actually happening. They are not there. They have this, and William Carney or Mark Carney actually was talking about this. William Dudley was talking about this. They're all part of the Federal Reserve. Central bankers, or either current or ex-central bankers, are talking about this, and how they have formed this coalition of different banks that will not lend money to people unless they are investing or lend money to other banks, unless they are lending money to outfits or people in general or businesses that pass a carbon sniff test. Whether their projects or whatever they're doing, if it doesn't promote either a carbon neutral or negative carbon type of footprint. So that's going to leave a lot of people out in the cold. That's going to cost a lot of money over the long run, and it's going to bankrupt a lot of countries. I mean, can you see what's really happening here? This whole climate thing is a scam because it is designed to bankrupt this country, because we have to lead the way when it comes to all this stuff, and it's really going to bankrupt everything. And if you look back at what I'm really talking about here, is that's exactly what they're trying to do. They are trying to take the U.S. out of financial decisions. They are trying to take the dollar out of financial decisions. They are trying to undermine the dollar and replace it with something else. That is what's really going on here. Okay, so keep in mind here what's happening here. Okay, so there was another opinion piece that came out shortly after this whole meeting came out, and it was by Bill Dudley. Bill Dudley is another Fed chair. He's a New York Fed chair. He's all part of the Federal Reserve. All these people are central bankers. And he wrote an opinion piece that the Fed shouldn't enable Donald Trump. The central bank should refuse to play along with an economic disaster in the making. What they are trying to do here, people, and this is the final point that I want to make, is that we have discussed that how they want to create a how they want the central bank to start making more fiscal policies along with the monetary policies. But they also want to usurp the power of the dollar. They want to replace the dollar with the Libra, a virtual currency that that can be tracked and all this other kind of stuff being turned on and off. We all know how that works. But not only that, but they want to form a coup against the president. And this was on Bloomberg. This was just back in August 27th. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read something that does make a lot of sense when you hear it. So according to conventional wisdom, if Trump's trade war with China hurts the U.S. economic outlook, the Fed should respond by adjusting monetary policy accordingly. In this case, by cutting interest rates. But what if the Fed's accommodation encourages the president to escalate the trade war further, increasing the risk of a recession? The central bank's effort to cushion the blow might not be merely ineffectual. They might actually make things worse. So what they're saying is that they're going to get more involved in the politics of what's going on. Okay, so based on what Trump does, then they have to respond in kind. So it goes further and it gets even worse. Yet the Fed could go much further. Officials could state explicitly that the central banks won't bail out an administration that keeps making bad choices on trade policy. And that's what their opinion is, that's bad choices, making it abundantly clear that Trump will own the consequences of his actions. They want Trump to own everything. They want him to be responsible for it. And they are willing to deep six the economy to achieve such things. I understand and support Fed's official desire to remain apolitical, which means outside the political realm, but Trump's ongoing attacks on Powell and on the institution that have made that untenable. So they have to get involved politically. Central bank officials face a choice: enable the Trump administration to continue down a disastrous path of trade war escalation, or send a clear signal that if the administration does so, the president, not the Fed, will bear the risk, including the risk of losing the next election. That is a direct threat to the president and a coup against the standing presidency. That is what's going on right now. The Fed is trying to take over everything. There's even an argument that that the election itself falls within the Fed's purview. I mean, they are openly saying that the Federal Reserve is going to choose the next president. They are going to deep six this economy. If the president wins, not even if the president wins, look for this. Next year, if they believe that if the president has a chance, a good chance of winning again, They will pull the plug on the entire economy, and they will deep six this. They will forward this whole Libra thing. They might bypass it altogether and just completely demolish the economy so they can start all over again. After all, Trump's reelection arguably presents a threat to the U.S. and global economy. This is from a Federal Reserve chair from New York. He is saying this. He's saying that Trump's reelection arguably presents a threat to the U.S. and global economy, to the Fed's independence and ability to achieve its employment and inflation objectives. If the goal of monetary policy is to achieve the best long-term economic outcome, then Fed officials should consider how their decisions will affect the political outcome in 2020. How more direct can you possibly be? I've given you everything right now for you to go out there and do your own research. I will put all the links here, and you can share them all with your friends. This is what's going on right now. The banksters are really gearing up to take over the entire foundation. They are taking over the entire farm, and then they're killing all the crops. Okay, they're burning everything to the ground, and no one cares because no one sees what's going on. They're too sidetracked with this whole climate change thing. Why do you think this is such a big deal? Why do you think this is going on? Why do you think there's such a huge thing with the climate change right now and this whole carbon footprint? It seemed like it went away for a little bit. Now it just came up out of nowhere. Think about it, people. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. Stay safe out there. This is Joe with Simple Life Show. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good social media stuff. Have a great day. Bye.